Hello, Podsmashers of the Internet, and welcome to another episode of
80-bit Podsmash,
where gaming goes to grab a beer. We are your hosts.
Penguin and Termite. I'm Penguin.
I'm Termite.
And we are a weekly video game podcast smashing together topics you care about with video games.
And that was a good clink.
It was a great clink. It's the best clink we've had in a while.
Yeah, last couple ones have been.
I was going to say, I edited our last few episodes and they've been weak. Mm-hmm. And one time we spilled.
We spilled a couple days in a row. Weeks in a row.
What are we drinking tonight?
So in celebration, honor, or in any facetious way we can talk about it, we are drinking Coronas tonight.
In honor of the
coronavirus
pandemic status of the coronavirus.
It's in Virginia now, so
it
cheers.
Yep,
cheers to welcome into Virginia.
It's inevitable. Only a matter of time before we get it and pass it on to our loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
So we're drinking Coronas. I want to have like a 6-pack of Coronas. Like the moment I get the coronavirus,
yep,
I'm gonna have someone who doesn't have coronavirus go to the store, or maybe I'll go with like I just have wear some gloves and a mask, just so I don't infect others. But I'm gonna go pick myself up a 6-pack of Corona, some limes, and just chill.
Have your Coronacation.
Have my Coronacation. Exactly.
Some people are like on their honeymoons and they're like, uh-oh, I guess I'm going to get stuck in Tahiti. Man.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. So the latest coronavirus news was that South by Southwest, which is a gaming, arts, and music festival.
Oh, I thought it was a movie thing.
No. Well, maybe movies are involved too. It's a big conglomerate. It's a bigger, like
artsy festival.
Higher up than gaming. But gaming is there. I mean, people in the gaming industry are there. It's in Austin, Texas, usually. Mm-hmm. And it's canceled.
Keep Austin weird.
Yeah. It's canceled because of coronavirus. Yeah.
Everything's canceled. E3 is still in question. A lot of people are. The ESA has said they're going forward with E3, but a lot of people are rightly. I mean, it's going to be in, like, what, June?
Yeah.
They've got time,
right.
But who knows how long this thing's going to be raging. So
yeah, so we lost PAX. No, we didn't lose PAX, but people backed out of PAX. We lost GDC, and South by Southwest is the next to go.
Yeah.
So and TwitchCon's canceled as well.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, things are big.
Just boom, 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 boom.
Just getting knocked out.
You were gonna
day. I was gonna say though, in other news, another thing to talk about is so we've just jumped right into our news section,
right?
But speaking of summer, they tacked on a release date to Ghost of Tsushima. It'll be coming out June 26th, 3 days after my birthday.
Hey, I think you're asking for something.
You
Does your wife know?
I will probably already. I'll probably have it pre-ordered, so it's fine.
You already do?
I am not. I don't yet, but I will probably have it pre-ordered. So I am by no means dropping a hint. I am simply saying I'll be celebrating my birthday by playing Ghost of Tsushima 3 days later.
I'm just so glad that Cyberpunk got delayed because you have Doom in March, you got Final Fantasy in April, and then you have Last of Us in May, and you have
Ghost of Tsushima in June. Yeah, so I still have my boom 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 month games. Yeah, that's nice.
Spring's looking hot. Yeah.
Oh, but then you have the one wrench of Resident Evil 3.
Depends on if you're on. Yeah, if you're gonna get it, because then that kind of throws that in there. But Resident Evil 3 is not a super long game. You know, it's like
that's true.
It's not one of those big, arching,
sprawling.
big, huge games.
Just because it comes out so close to Final Fantasy, I probably will wait until I finish Final Fantasy to get that.
Yeah.
Which means in the month of May, I may be playing 2 zombie-ish games.
Yep.
Back to back. But we'll see. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
It's going to be great. I'm so excited. It's going to be a great spring. So we had our Everything Doom episode last week.
We did.
Doom should be already in our hands and your hands by the time you listen to this. But as of right now, it is not yet in our hands. So couple weeks out.
Yeah. And the last
we're already in news. So finish off
the last part of our news. What was just announced today, which might date us, that Reggie Fils-Aimé to join the board of directors for GameStop.
Crazy. We just been talking about GameStop. Oh man, is it too little too late though? Like,
I don't know. We'll go into it. I'm going to read this article because there's some other things happening too. So I'm actually reading a VentureBeat article written by Jeff Grubb, and I'm just going to highlight some of the things here. Joining Fils-Aimé on the board is Bill Simon and J.K. Simonak. I don't know how to pronounce his last name at all, but Bill Simon had worked 30 years in the various exclusive roles in the retail industry. Simonak is the president and chief executive of PetSmart. GameStop's goal is to have Simon and Simonak provide expertise to help turn its struggling business back towards profitability. Quote, this is what Fils-Aimé said on Twitter. The gaming industry needs a healthy and vibrant GameStop. I look forward to being a part of GameStop's corporate board and helping to make this happen. The board. This is a GameStop quote from Chief Executive George Sherman. The board refreshment and governance enhancements announced today represent an important milestone in GameStop's transformation as we continue to evolve the company's business strategy for long-term success. They are each highly qualified and bring significant, relevant experience to our turnaround. And there's a bunch of others talk and stuff in there, but basically they're shaking up their board. They're adding some past experience. I mean, Reggie alone has been CEO of Nintendo of America from 2006 through 2019. He personally headed the release of the Wii, which is the most successful console
and
from
the
Nintendo.
Switch, right?
And the Switch.
Yeah.
And well, the Wii was a flop, but I wonder how much
The
more.
Wii was not a flop.
Wii U.
Yeah.
See that? There you go. That's the confusion, right? I
Yeah.
said the Wii U was a flop, and you didn't even catch. That was the issue. It was the name anyway. So outside of the Wii U, the DS, the 3DS, the Wii, and the Switch were all helmed by Reggie in America, and he is just like a powerhouse.
Right.
He knows how to market. He knows how to talk. He knows how to sell. And make it like he's not a cheesy salesman.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. No, he's a chill guy.
He's so awesome.
People have a lot of respect for Reggie, and I hope we can turn it around. I would love, as we've talked about, for a healthy GameStop.
That was what I wanted to highlight in
I
his
want it
tweet.
to be a place that I want it to be a place that we want to go. I don't think they'll be able to do it without having to still significantly close a number of stores. Like
they're gonna have to.
I still think we're looking at like, especially if the next gen consoles get delayed, then we're definitely looking at several thousand stores closing.
Oh, probably, if not more than that.
Yeah.
The funny part about all this is I've read all the articles across different journalism outlets, right? I've read Kotaku's take, IGN's, VentureBeat here is what I quoted, Polygon, and Engadget. They all have their own spin. Every single one of them have a paragraph that's like this. GameStop is struggling as more people turn to digital purchases or free-to-play live service games. That's a part of the puzzle, and I was pondering this and thinking about what else is happening. If you go look at like the Reddit subthread for GameStop, and you see 90% of the customer complaints, and that's just a number that I mean like the majority, overwhelming majority of the customer complaints aren't about the stock. It's about what the employees are presenting them. It's constantly shoving trade-ins and power-up rewards and warranties down your throat instead of having a conversation about video games.
Yeah.
It's employees, both managers, store owners, and employees, all complaining about how corporate is shoving this vision down their throats every single meeting about meeting their numbers. And what they mean by their numbers are how many power-up reward signups did you get? How many trade-ins did you get? How many pre-orders did you get? How many cell phones did you take as trade-ins? And people are getting fired because they're not meeting their numbers.
Right.
And managers are losing hours that they're allowed to allocate, which forces young people that don't need to be in their stores by themselves closing and opening the stores by themselves.
Oh, I had to do that back in the day when I worked at Subway. It was awful.
Me too. Yeah, it was terrible. That's hilarious. We have the same little...
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Or maybe we have talked about this before,
Yeah.
but that's like the main reason I quit. I was like, I don't feel safe doing this.
Yeah, it's horrible, right?
Yeah.
You're all by yourself. You have to close the entire store down.
Yeah.
And you're there super late hours because you're by yourself. Anyway, that aside... That's the part that, like, not a lot of people talk about with GameStop's demise. The only thing brick and mortar has left to offer because of online storefronts is customer service.
It's personability. Yep.
That's it. It's not about the stock. It's not about what you're bringing or taking. It's the experience. It's going in and like talking to someone that likes games like you do. It's perusing these old libraries of games, having that blockbuster-like experience.
Amazon
where you're, like,
offers me
browsing.
everything that GameStop does, but it does it in a little bullet checklist at the bottom where I can, and it comes with them defaulted unchecked.
Right.
And then I can go in there and be like, oh yes, I want a protection plan. Oh yes, I want blah, 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 blah. Like, oh yes, I want this to add the strategy guide. Like, I can do all of that.
And not interact with a
And
soul.
not have to, but like, it's just there in the fine print underneath my thing. It's not in my face. It doesn't come up in pop-ups. It just is, it's just there.
And
I
there's
can look
not
down
an
and scroll down and be
employee's
like,
life on the line
Yeah.
for not some customer not wanting those things.
Yeah. I mean, Amazon has problems as a company in and of
They
itself,
do.
but
Yeah. But I just wanted to highlight, like, I was thinking
Yeah.
about GameStop
No,
and their
it's
presence and with what Reggie said. Like, the gaming industry needs a healthy GameStop.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking about what other stores are out there to buy video games from if we don't have GameStop.
right, all it is the big box ones, Best Buy and Walmart.
Right. And those aren't fun to buy games from.
No.
The employees don't know anything about games. They don't even know what you're talking about. You walk in, you're like, hey, I want to get this new Doom. And they're like, well, here's one on the shelf. Like, that's the old one. I want the new one. And they're like, oh, here's your Xbox. I want PlayStation. Well, what's a PlayStation? Oh, my gosh, right? And then you have your mom and pop, grop shops that are popping up around. Like, we have Dawnstar Games in Richmond. We have Eastarland in Chantilly. We have various game outlets like that are super fun to go in and browse and talk about. And those people are passionate. You go there and you know they care about games because...
But they're not for every good one there is out there, there's probably a crappy one out
Probably.
there. And
We interviewed
not-
David from Game Over Games.
Yep. And that's the nice thing about GameStop is it was ubiquitous. If there's an outlet mall, there's going to be a GameStop. So like having a haven, a place where you can go talk games with people, talk shop, is a great thing.
Yep.
So
And not be asked about stupid things.
Exactly. I do agree with Reggie that a healthy GameStop is important. Making a GameStop a healthy business, making GameStop a healthy place to go, and trying to find what it is, like what it should be as a store, that's going to be the trick.
Yep.
And
that's a hard question to answer.
That's a really hard question. Exactly.
Because
so
you
like,
still do have the digital storefronts and the free-to-play models like to compete against.
Yep.
That's still thing. That's that. But it's not the only thing, but that's that.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see what he brings to the table. I'm interested to see what GameStop's future is. I think it's going to come at the cost of a lot of stores closing. And
it's got to get worse before it gets better.
Exactly. Yeah. It'll definitely get worse before it gets better. So, all right.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with that
for sure.
news
For sure.
hit.
So we never got around to talking about what we're talking about tonight.
Oh, right. What's our topic about tonight?
Our topic tonight, we're talking about progression systems. You may know them as experience, XP, leveling up. So we're going to talk about that, but we'll also talk about alternatives, and we'll talk about what good, healthy progression systems look like and what are downsides to the various models out there. So that's kind of what our show's going to be tonight. Maybe we'll come up with some XP systems ourselves. Imagine some progression systems ourselves.
Come up with our own. This could almost be a series highlighting different aspects of game design.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And we could just start with all this.
That's kind of what that's like most of our episodes are just highlighting different aspects of game design. Many of them,
Let's start a podcast about game design.
All right. But before we move on to our main topic where we talk about progression systems, we're going to have a segment that is our favorite thing.
Doing this podcast is our favorite thing. Doing this podcast is our favorite thing.
Favorite things. So this is a segment where we just like to share with you something that's going on that we like, that we've discovered this week, in hopes that you might find your next favorite thing.
Something you dig.
Something you're digging.
Something as shallow as a perfectly bagged popped popcorn.
Or as deep as the Fermi paradox.
Oh, I don't even know what that is.
Fermi paradox is if the universe is so big and the chances that life has evolved outside of our, like, if the universe is so big, then that means that the chances of life evolving outside of our, intelligent life evolving outside of our planet are like astronomically high.
Uh-huh.
So the Fermi paradox is a simple question. Where is everybody?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the answers to the Fermi paradox are numerous, but no answer fully answers it, of course, until we make first contact with alien intelligence.
Yeah. Where is everyone?
Where is everyone?
I like it.
That's not what we're talking about.
No, it's not.
And that's not my favorite thing, although I do love talking about the Fermi paradox. Maybe we should start a podcast on the Fermi paradox.
Hey, 80-bit Fermi.
Fermi bit paradox. I'll start. My favorite thing is, I'm blanking. Goodness gracious. My favorite thing is I went to North Carolina, to Wilmington this past weekend to visit my grandmother. A chance to let her see her great grandson. So we went down there. The beach house we stayed at was awful. It was such a poorly designed beach house. Like, we made it work, but it just seemed like, especially the first night we got there, where we were already really stressed because we just drove 4 hours with a 1-year-old who was not having a good time near the end of the last hour of the trip. And then this beach house was just so frustrating. And the biggest problem was the room we were keeping Gavin in was more like a closet that was between two rooms. And the room furthest back only had one entrance, and or either two entrances. One was through another room and through the baby's sleeping area, or outside. So to get to this room where we ended up sleeping, we had to go around the house, basically.
That's terrible.
And then there was no, like, central air in the, like, room we kept Gavin. So we had to, so I turned the thing on, and at one point the monitor, which tracks temperature as well, and it was 59 degrees.
That's really cold.
It was like 10 degrees lower than it should be for a 1-year-old. So I, like, freaked out, and I managed to get the temperature back up. By the time I went to bed, it was like
What did you do?
68. Well, what we had to do is we basically had to, the room we were sleeping in, we had to open the door.
Yeah. To let heat in.
To let the heat in, exactly. And then
were you sharing with someone else sleeping in the other bedroom?
Yeah.
Were there? So
my mom was sleeping. So yeah, exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's just like, so it was really, really frustrating.
So if mom had to get up and use the bathroom,
yeah,
she got to come through Gavin's room.
Fortunately,
through your
she
room.
had a way into the house main proper. If we wanted to get up and go to the bathroom, we had to get out. We had to go outside or go
outside.
through mom's room.
Yeah. Wow.
But we'd have to go through the baby's room. It was such a stupidly laid out house.
Yeah, that's terrible.
But that's, again, this is favorite things, not least favorite things.
Yeah.
While down there in Carolina Beach is where we were staying, I found this burrito place.
Ooh.
That was awesome. It was called Flamin' Amy's Burrito Barn.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the Flamin' Amy, which was the hottest burrito they had on the menu. It had like jalapenos in it. It had the ancho chilies.
Incredible.
It had like a habanero salsa.
Yeah.
And then they also had they would give you complimentary chips. Even if you had a to-go order, they gave you a big bag of complimentary chips.
Yeah.
And they had a salsa bar, which had like some of the great, like it was all fresh ingredients. They had like ginger peach, wasabi avocado, dipping sauce. Oh, it was so good. So I got like 8 or 9 little things and I took it back home and I ate my burrito. Oh, I couldn't even fit. It was so like filling, but it was mostly like, it wasn't the best food I've ever had, like Mexican food I've ever had, but the ingredients themselves just tasted fresh.
Yeah.
Like everything seemed so fresh and good. So it was a great burrito place. Flamin' Amy's Burrito Barn. They have a Wilmington location and they have a Carolina Beach location. Ooh. So if you're ever down that part of North Carolina, then check it out.
We usually go every September to Emerald Isle, which is an hour and a half north of Wilmington.
Oh, nice.
So we'll have to go down to
make
Wilmington,
a little trip down.
which we've been before. Wilmington's awesome.
Yeah, Wilmington's great. So, and then my other little favorite thing, if I can indulge, is my son is walking now.
Ooh.
So kind of, he can take like 5 or 6 steps at a time,
And then plop.
and then blah. But he is just like, he's looking more like a little person now. Like he's no longer this little, all babies kind of look the same, and they start to feature out as they grow up.
Yeah.
But they're all just little babies and they're little potatoes basically.
Mm-hmm.
But now he's got legs, and I can see like the musculature of his legs, and I'm like, man, kid.
He's growing up.
You're meaty, like you're a little meaty kid, and like you can walk, and he's great. So I'm just like, I'm a super proud parent.
Aww.
All right, my favorite thing is that.
My favorite thing is we have a bi-weekly small group on Sundays that involve a meal at the beginning of, and we usually plan the meal in advance, a theme, whether it's like Italian or tacos or whatever. Well, this week is Pie Day, so we had Pie Day as the theme. So pizza pie, shepherd's pie, chicken pot pie, what have you. I look over to a church friend who I won't name because I don't know if he's comfortable with this sharing. And I was like, dude, we need to make a taco pie. And he was all about it. So I went over to his place on Sunday. I brought some Slightly Mighty IPAs and we assembled, made, and baked a multi-layered taco pie.
Wow.
It started with a pie crust. We made meat with taco seasoning, black beans and onions, like heat that on the stove. So I prepared the pie plate itself. So I lined the tray with Fritos and pie crust. So I shoved the Fritos into the pie crust. He layered the meat. We layered cheese, and then we took tortilla shells. Nice layer of tortilla shells, like a mid-layer, and then more meat, more cheese, topped it with pico de gallo, which is onions, tomatoes, cilantro, and lime, and then cheese on top, and then the final top layer was more Fritos.
Nice.
And we baked the whole thing. It was awesome. And
That's awesome.
it was the first thing to be wiped out at the event.
Proud of yourself.
Yeah.
I think of 2 things immediately. I'm like, a pizza, like, have you ever seen like a real proper Chicago deep dish pizza where it's just, it looks like a pie? I mean, it looks like a pie.
I've seen them. I haven't had one.
I haven't either. I'm like, I would love to make a proper Chicago style deep dish pizza pie.
Yeah.
And then my other immediate thought was, ooh, I'd make a shepherd's pie.
Yeah.
I love shepherd's pie. I'd make a pretty good one. Although apparently, I learned this, if you don't make the pie with lamb, you can't actually technically call it a shepherd's pie. It's
really?
Cottage pie if you make it with beef or turkey or any other meat. It's a cottage pie.
Have I ever had yours before?
I don't know. I don't know if I've ever made it for you.
Every time I hear the word shepherd's pie and I look at the ingredients, I'm like, that's got to be amazing, but it always is underwhelming.
Oh, really?
I've never had a shepherd's pie that like met the excitement that I get by reading about what it is.
It's meat and potatoes is all it is. It's meat with mixed vegetables and potatoes. Yeah,
so
like a layer of potatoes.
I don't know what it is, but I've never had an amazing shepherd's pie.
I'll make you my shepherd's pie and
blew me out of the water.
I don't think mine's going to blow you out of the water. Mine's super cheap, but anyways.
Well, I want a good one.
What he meant by Pie Day, for the record, just so everyone knows, is
March 14th.
March 14th, which is 314.
Yeah.
And that is the first three numbers of pi.
Mm-hmm.
The number pi, or is the number, right? Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
The
It's a constant.
squiggly.
Yeah. Has to do with circumference and
Yeah,
radius and geometry.
Yeah, geometry. The geometric number pi.
Yeah.
So 3.14159. So at 159, you have to eat pie on Pi Day.
That's right.
Which is great because I'll be in Harrisonburg
Will
on
you?
Pi Day.
And why is that good?
Because my sister lives there, and she's a huge, not only is she a huge science and math nerd, but she also likes to bake. So my chances of eating pie on Pi Day have just gone up by pi.
All right. What kind of pie are you going to get?
Multiplied by pie. I don't know. We'll see. I'll ask her if she's going to make pie on Pi Day.
Okay.
For her nephew. I was going to say.
Saturday is
grandson.
Pi Day itself. My wife and I are planning on
Exciting.
going out, so hopefully
Nice.
we can partake of some pie.
Man, all the holidays are on like weekends this
I know,
year. It's
right?
crazy.
St. Patrick's Day and Pi Day are the same day.
Oh, what?
Yeah,
St.
St. Patty
Patty's
pie.
Day. That's awesome.
Get you a St. Patty pie.
Ooh, yeah.
An Irish car bomb.
Like a shepherd's pie. It's
Hey.
an Irish dish.
I thought it was an English dish.
Yeah. British. The British
Not
Isles.
the same. Okay. And
All
with
right,
that,
now that I just offended all of the UK.
yep, it's time for our next segment, which is DLC. Downloadable content
Wow.
in
gosh.
stereo.
It's like we've been doing this for 131 episodes. Or
How about
something.
that?
DLC is a segment where we have a little fun game or mini discussion, some conversation you wouldn't normally have about video games. And tonight,
And just like the video game DLC, it costs a little extra,
Yeah.
and it's usually a percentage of the base price, which is
Uh-huh.
10% of the base price of this podcast to you.
and it cuts out a portion of the content of the
Right.
episode and delivers it to you later, I guess, or before. No, it's not like none of those things.
10% of zero is still zero.
Yes,
You guys
exactly.
get all of this free.
Yeah. So DLC today is if you could describe your job in terms of a video game progression system, what would it be? Like
Ooh.
what elements of what progression systems would your job include?
Escalation.
Yeah, I believe that.
I work for a government contractor. I'm a software engineer. Specifically, I work with electronic warfare. That sounds fancy, but what
Mhm.
that is specifically regarding shipboard defense. So the defense of a ship, a Navy
Yeah.
ship in the water. And I said escalation is the key word because as other countries come up with more advanced threats, and that's different types of missiles or whatever you want to call it, the United States comes up with new tactics to defeat said things, and then that causes the enemies to come up with new threats, and then we come up with new ways to defend them, and it just keeps going infinitely. And so the progression of all of that is that. So as one new thing comes out, we study it and learn it, and we come up with ways with which to defeat it, and we level up. We upgrade our
Yeah.
systems. You know, we add new things, new sensors,
I
new
think of like
responses.
think of like an RTS, like research,
Yep.
and
New
then
levels, yeah.
like you research and then research complete, and then you have to then produce units. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So you have to then build the
It's very much like that.
I see that.
Yeah.
That's cool. I think of mine. I am a what do you call it? I essentially an engineer. You might call my job. I'm not. That's not technically my title, but I'm like a virtual engineer. Virtual solutions engineer is what my title is.
Virtual solutions engineer.
Technically, I'm a virtual solutions specialist.
I need to go put a suit on and talk to you.
Yeah. So my company provides like virtualization for our clients, who are various businesses, mostly law firms. But
Now you're starting to now you're starting to sound salesman-y.
yeah, mostly. So if I were to describe my job in terms of progression system, it would be a little bit of like an XP system leveling up. You know, every time I do a particular task, I get a little bit better at it.
You level up.
So yeah,
Like,
yeah, I'm
okay, I got
leveling
you.
up. Yeah.
Okay.
But then also it's also surrounding like it's also a bit of like an achievement system too, where it's like you've done this thing, you have unlocked this
Oh, nice.
set of skills,
Yeah.
or whatever, and yeah, so like for like doing one-time tasks because I think of like certifications and stuff like that. Like I'm inching my way towards a Microsoft Azure certification, so I have to do all this training, and then
Yeah,
it's
you
like
do.
boom, now I have all these skills. So yeah, I think that I would say it's a little bit of a mix between like an achievement system and a bit of an XP.
I
Kind of
like that, yeah.
Elder Scrolls. The more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah. Yep. I added that to our list.
I did. I saw that.
Yeah, how about that?
That's why I thought of it. I was like, ooh. So that's DLC.
Meow.
Tell
DLC.
us what your jobs are, and if you were to describe your job in terms of a video game progression system, what would it be? But first, you'll have to finish this episode because we'll talk to you about all the different flavors of progression systems with which you can use to describe your job.
Before we launch into that, we want to tell you guys where else you can find us, because we're not just in your podcast app on Monday mornings anymore.
Ooh,
we exist elsewhere.
Where are we?
We exist in Discord. You can come interact with us live. We got some new conversations starting up lately in Discord. The link is on all of our show notes and on Facebook to every week that posts on Monday. We're also at twitch.tv/80bit Podsmash on Wednesday nights. One of us streams. We've been doing this now for about a month. We're alternating stream sometimes.
Different game each time, usually.
Usually, we want to mix it all up.
Yeah, mix it up. Find something we like to do. If there's something that you like that we stream and you're like, I liked it when they stream that,
then let us know. Yep.
So
and you can do that on social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Reddit. We have a subreddit. You can go start your own forum, your own thread about some topic that you care about. Interact with us there. Give us feedback, thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, and ideas. We want to know. Please rate us. Go to iTunes and give us a review. Throw us some stars our way, and that'll help bubble us up in the algorithms so that we can be more discoverable. That'd be awesome. And if you hear us by way of some strange medium and you want to know where else you can find our audio, you can go to 80bitpodsmash.com. That's our landing website where we have links to Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and iTunes.
Of course, they already would have found us if they're listening to us by now.
You never know.
But yeah, you never know.
Sometimes you find us on Spotify. You're like, oh, where else can I get this?
I see. I see.
And the RSS feed link is also there in case you want to throw it into a third-party app.
Mm-hmm. How can I listen to them on iTunes? Go to 8bitpodsmash.com.
That's right. Click the link.
Boom.
Takes you right there.
Progression systems. More than just XP is what I subtitled this episode.
I like this. You got to remind me that when I actually upload it so I can put the text in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, more than just XP. It's on our. It's titled that way on our upcoming episodes. So I don't know if you look at that doc, refer to that doc. You'll just put it in the episode notes here.
Do it
right now.
I could.
All right. So progression systems. What are we talking about? What's a progression system? So we'll answer that first. What is a progression system? What purpose do they serve? And then we'll talk a little bit about the most ubiquitous progression system, which is experience. So progression system is what it kind of sounds like. It's a gameplay mechanic, a system that's in place that enables you essentially to progress through the game.
The player.
And the player.
You,
yes.
the player.
Yes, the player. The player character, the player. And it is just, I mean, there's usually some kind of time reward, like rewarding your time as you go through the game. And usually it's something where you can look back and say, oh, look how far I've come.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's, oh, look, I started out as a level 1 character and now I have a numerical validation of my progress in the game because now I am level 99. Yeah. Or whether it's, look, I can see my list of achievements, or I've collected all of the things. The game has said I have 100% on the map or whatever. You know what I mean? So just some system in place that allows you to measure your progress as you develop.
When you walk in on someone playing Mario 1 and they're in World 8, you're like, holy cow, you made it to World 8.
Yeah, and again, it can be as simple as just that. It can be as simple as you working your way through the levels, as in environments, not levels as in character progression, but just being able to say, oh, you're on level 8. Essentially, level systems, like tiered environments are a form of progression, one of the oldest forms of progression.
Yep. Finding new equipment that unlocks new areas. We'll go through them all. That's a progression system. It's how the player advances through the game.
The purpose they serve is pretty obvious. It's to allow the player to sort of have a sense of fulfillment, accomplishment. I mean, we talked a lot about that in our MMO, I think our MMO episode where we talked about.
It's huge there.
Yeah, it's an accomplishment simulator, essentially, is to be able to say, look at what I've done. And to give you a sense of beginning, middle, end in a story. But also, some of the more robust progression systems allow replayability and coming back, having something to always chase after.
Which is especially important in today's games as a service era of gaming. With the Division 2 and Destiny 2 and
those are called
MMOs.
And those are based off of the works of B.F. Skinner. And they're called Skinner a lot of people call them derogatorily Skinner box progression systems. Because, as I've mentioned them before, the experiments were he put a rat in a box and then he put a little buzzer and he'd give the rat a treat every time the buzzer. So the rat learned to push the buzzer and he gets a treat. Push the buzzer, get a treat. Push the buzzer, get a treat. He continued the experiment by he'd have the rat push the buzzer, and sometimes the rat would get a treat, and sometimes the rat wouldn't get a treat. And what he found was that the more the rat would end up pushing the button more frantically because he wanted, because of the possibility of getting a treat.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we talked about this in that gambling microtransaction episode. Yeah.
And then the last thing he added to the experiment was sometimes he'd give the rat a shock, and sometimes he'd give the rat a treat, and sometimes the rat wouldn't get anything. And even when he would be administered a shock, the rat would still push the button more frantically. Yeah. So people have studied those experiments and designed all kinds of progression systems based off of that.
That's a good example of bad game design.
Yeah.
It's wrapping the progression system around RNG, random number generator, because there's different possibilities by doing a certain task, and you don't know if you're going to get what you actually want.
So people end up playing and devoting more and more time and start getting in that addictive loop because
that's not
of the possibility of getting
but it's lucrative.
Mm-hmm. It is.
It makes a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
It's not fun, but it makes a lot of money.
No. That's what's interesting when you study these things. A lot of those kinds of Skinner box progression systems, players will actually report having less fun and yet still, it's all just addiction.
Yeah.
They're doing it because they're addicted to because of the dopamine rush.
Right.
But they also self-describe it as not fun. So, lots of games are guilty of that.
It's like trophy hunting. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's not fun, but you do it.
So lots of games are guilty of that.
The reason we want to talk about progression systems is because it's so fundamental to how a game is received.
Right.
How
and also
you feel about it.
It's all over the place in game design now. Games are starting to include experience systems that arguably shouldn't have experience systems. And some are including experience systems and finding that, this actually enhances the game and makes it more enjoyable. I think an example that comes to mind is the newest Assassin's Creed games.
Yeah.
Were very well received for their experience systems. And that's a RPG mechanic, like we talked about a couple episodes ago in RPGs.
So a good progression system is vital for maintaining a player's interest. When they work, you can have a game that keeps people coming back for hours and hours on end, but without it, they may not come back at all and they just drop it. It's also a pacing mechanism. As pacing is key, the amount of reward per task needs to strike a good balance.
Yeah.
So if you have a bad progression system, you add pain points, you add feelings of burnout, lack of interest, and then people will bail out of your game. We don't want that either.
Exactly. All right, so we're going to talk about the most ubiquitous, at this stage in gaming, it wasn't always, but at this stage in gaming, the most ubiquitous progression system is the leveling up.
Yeah.
The experience
bar.
XP, the XP gain, the XP levels. So again, not to be confused, there's two kind of words for levels in gaming. There's environments, new environments.
Right, a world, a place that you navigate, a setting.
I'm on level 4 and it's the water level.
Yeah.
That's a perfectly fine term for level. But we're talking about leveling where your character, it is a number associated with your character that is a relative strength indicator.
I'm a level 5.
A level 5 will usually beat a level 1 in a duel.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so what does XP mean? What is XP or experience? And what does leveling up mean? So the two are tied together. And do you want to explain XP?
Yeah, XP is experience points.
Yep.
And it's usually because it takes X amount of experience points to level up. So if you're level 1, it takes you 100 points. Well, how do you get 100 points? You usually go kill some enemies that drop 10, 15 points apiece, depending on the pacing. There you go. Yep. So sometimes they drop 1. And if you have to get 100 of them, you have to fight 100 enemies. It takes a while. That might not be fun, but that's XP.
I always think of the South Park episode of World of Warcraft episode where they're like, we're going to stay in the forest. Or it's like, boars are 2 experience points apiece. So if we kill, or so it was like, do you know how many boars we'd have to kill to get to max level? I do know. And he did the math and it was like, 560,449 or whatever. Yep. So they said they're staying in the forest and kill boars.
And they must have level up. They did it for hours and hours and hours.
So it's like,
away.
They're usually fixed. It's like each level is X amount of experience points. The next level is Y amount of experience points. And then each enemy is
such that Y is a percentage of X.
Exactly. And then each enemy is a smaller number of points, but they're fixed.
Yep.
And so usually, again, the idea is you have to get more and more kills or complete more and more quests or turn in more and more bounties or whatever. And each level is harder to get than the next one. And then there's usually a level cap where this is the maximum level you can achieve. I don't know of any games out there that have no level cap. I know they exist.
Disgaea, I believe,
or they have
with no level cap.
Yeah, or they have functional level caps where it's like the math has gotten so high that you'd never be able to achieve the next level.
Right.
So it's a functional level cap, but I know they exist out there, but most games cap it off at some relatively reasonable number.
Yeah.
and that has changed over the years as to what's relatively reasonable. I don't think I ever had a level 99 Diablo 2 character.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I don't think I ever got to max level in Diablo 2. But
I don't know if I have either.
Yeah.
I just know my brother had like 3.
Yeah.
Shout out to T-Bone.
Oh, wow, good for him.
Yeah,
Of course, it was my first RPG,
Yeah.
like ARPG ever, so
Mm-hmm.
I was maybe just a noob, but I just remember, I remember killing, I'd go on Bale runs.
Mm-hmm.
And Bale runs were there were a bunch of little mini bosses before Bale, and they were a huge amount of experience points apiece.
You just grind it out.
And you grind it, but I just remember being
over.
oh my gosh, I've done this so many times. Yeah. And so that's
so
what
boring.
Yeah. So
Look, this whole experience progression system actually took shape years ago in different types of forms of games. So it's easy for us to think about Final Fantasy or Dragon Warrior or any of those old early RPGs, but Gauntlet. That's a Western game. It's an action game, top down. For Nintendo, it was in the arcades first. Had an experience system. And you
I should have researched this a little bit more, but I would be willing to bet that experience finds its origins in D&D.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, because you basically in D&D you don't get it per kill though. You get a clump of experience for when you, or a set amount of experience for when you complete the campaign, the mission that you're on.
Yeah,
and then you have to do X amount of campaigns before you level up. And then and so usually again with the experience systems, again they're really rooted in RPGs. Usually it comes with some kind of stat increase where you're boom, I am now objectively stronger in these categories. Sometimes you can dole that out however you want, but sometimes it's a fixed okay, you get +3 strength, +3 wisdom, whatever.
Yeah.
And then usually there's it's tied to some kind of character abilities too, where you unlock more things. So now you're level 5, cool, you now have these abilities in your arsenal. So you have a sense of
progression.
Sense of progression. A sense of I'm getting stronger, I have more powerful abilities. So it feeds into that fantasy of if you're a mage, I've studied more and now I know these spells. Or if you're a warrior, I've trained more and now I can do this flippy, cool hammer cleave or whatever. And sometimes there's gear too. Oftentimes gear will be locked behind a level. You have to be level 10 to use this equipment, which again feeds the fantasy of I'm not strong enough. I've gotten this powerful item, but I can't use it yet. I'm not I have to train more and get more powerful.
Quick tangent about a bad design decision. Playing the Outer Worlds. I picked up a weapon that I'm level 5. This weapon was level 7. Oh, obviously I can't use it. That's what made me think about it. The font was red. So I hit level 7. The font's still red. I'm like, what the heck? It's a fire weapon. And I thought that I couldn't use it. But I could.
That's
and
fine.
it was good.
You can always use...
Yeah.
I don't think they lock you behind... I think you can use any weapon as long as you...
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm
so I
pretty sure.
could equip it.
Yeah.
So because the font was red, I thought I could not... I didn't even try.
That's funny.
Yeah, anyway, that's my tangent.
Yeah. No, that was... Yeah, I remember being confused by that at first, but then I realized it when I picked up an item that... Or I think I didn't even bother worrying about it, because the first elemental weapon I picked up was a shock or...
yeah, it was blue.
And so it was blue, and I was like, oh, I'm assuming I can equip this.
Yep.
So then when I came across the red one, I was like, oh, this is probably just another indicator of... Element, yeah. But so I wasn't confused by it, but I think it was just because I happened to pick up one that was a different.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, actually, you know what I thought at first? I thought it was broken.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was I thought the red indicated that it was
red font. It's just
it should be orange, right?
Right.
Orange is what people think of when they think of fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're right. There was a slight moment of confusion, and I was like, oh wait, no, I think that's plasma.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So yeah, that's XP. That's leveling up. Let's talk about alternatives, because we could sit here talking all night about XP. I will caveat by saying almost every game has these. We're going to get down to the very granular and describe different types of progression, but almost all games that have any kind of progression system have a combination of many of these.
Right.
So,
yeah, it's never just cut and dry.
Right. There's very few that are just cut and dry single things, and we'll try to pull out some exemplary examples of each one. Exemplary examples.
Hey.
A little redundant. Department of Redundancy department. But yeah, so we'll talk about different progression systems that are alternatives to XP, and we'll try to highlight which ones are our personal favorites.
Sounds like fun.
All right. You ready?
Let's go.
All right. Do you want to talk about the first one?
Gearing.
Yep.
That's a word.
It's the again, almost always goes hand in hand with a leveling system.
Yep.
And is probably one of the other most common progression systems.
Collecting loot with progressively higher numbers or effects that augment your character's ability and stats, usually tiered with quality. The point of that, and I think is what you were trying to get at, is usually gear is used after you hit max level, at least in modern game design.
Yeah, well, usually you get gear as you level up.
Right.
And a lot of modern games, especially ARPGs and and games as a service-y MMOs do this too.
Mhm.
You get gear as you go, and every once in a while you get a weapon or an item that's really powerful for your character. But usually it's just like, okay, usually the leveling experience is kind of, it's almost a mini game, and the game doesn't begin until end game.
Right.
When you reach
And
the level
end
cap,
game is max
that's
level.
the end game, and that's when you have all this content that's designed for max level players.
Right.
And that is, in what it used to be, the end game was just like a side thing.
Right.
It's switched almost now.
Mhm.
Many games, including Diablo, was like I said, Diablo 2, it took me forever to level up. That was the game. The game was leveling up.
Right.
And when you got a max level character, that was the end. Now, maybe you'd
Start trading
do some
stones to
things,
Jordan to get some
and
crazy
be
gear.
involved in all that crazy stuff.
Woof.
But that wasn't, there wasn't content all the content was available to characters of pretty much any level.
Right.
That changed with the dawn of the MMO, pretty much. Like, EverQuest and World of Warcraft would change that, where it's like, the leveling would then become almost the minigame. You just kind of slogged through the 1 through 60, and then when you hit 60, that's when the game began, and that's when you'd go raiding and PvP, and then there was years worth of content that was just designed for max level players.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's kind of the end game. But the progression beyond leveling at end game is
Gear.
almost always gear.
Yep.
Yeah, and so the gear can have, again, it can just increase your base stats. That's called what we call stat sticks, where it's just like, this staff gives you 100 intelligence and 35% critical
Those
strike.
make me feel really good.
Yeah.
I love those kinds of
Oh
weapons.
yeah, those are the fun
Like,
ones.
oh, it's easy. Done.
Boom.
It's
Yeah,
better.
Boom. I'm just better.
It's a
I'm
full
just stronger
upgrade
now.
over everything. Yep.
Yeah, gear can also progress your character by adding effects of some kind that enhance your abilities. So your fireball now shoots 2 fireballs, 2 projectiles for the cost of 1. And
Right.
that's kind of an effect that those kind of things can have that, makes progress. And then you get into what we call builds, where you're combining certain effects to make your character more powerful.
What kind of abilities are you going to use
Yeah.
with certain types of
And
gear?
we've talked about that ad nauseum in this podcast.
Yeah, we have.
What we want out of those kind of things.
Yep.
But yeah, there's tiered rarities too, where it's like, usually it's indicated by color. So there's the common items, the things that drop all the time. Then there's uncommon, rare, magical, and then you get into the cool ones where it's like, this is an epic piece of gear, legendary, mythic. What do they call them? Ancient, exotic is Destiny's, unique, and there's all kinds of, but they all mean the same thing. They're the rarest of the rare, the most powerful, the highest quality, and it's what you build your character. Usually, it's what you're seeking after specific pieces to make your character strong based on what they need. So.
Yeah. Gearing.
It's great. It is, I both love it and have a love-hate relationship with gear. That's where those Skinner box techniques that we're talking about almost these days, it's like, it's all around gear. It's like, leveling up is one thing. It's like, but then once you get to that end game, it's like, okay, now I gotta get the gear.
Right. And leveling up is static. You kill this enemy, you get this experience. I'm gonna level up.
You're eventually
and
gonna level up.
It's a time sink.
Yep.
Whereas the gearing is almost like skill and strategy. And random number generator.
Yep.
It's like
RNG.
grinding this same thing over and over and over again. There's your Skinner. Is that what you call it?
Skinner box.
Skinner box. To hopefully get this gear. But then when you do get the gear, you got to have the mind to build the character's abilities around that piece of gear so that you can use it for the best of its abilities.
Yeah.
So that's a whole different meta game.
Yep.
Where there's lots of forums that map that out for me, so I don't have to think about it.
Yeah. I have deep respect for the people who just sit there and like find the items and then do the math.
Yeah.
And test it and practice it.
Yeah.
That's not my cup of tea. I'm like, give me a guide. Tell me what I need to get.
Exactly.
All right,
what
cool.
I just said.
I'm getting that. And I need cooldown reduction. Okay, cool. I need X amount of cooldown reduction to make this build work. Awesome. Great.
That's what I want.
I'll put it together.
I'll go get it. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So that's gearing.
A caveat of gearing, or I guess the next directly experience related leveling up system, is what I call the Elder Scrolls.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know if it has a name, but it's like as you use it, it levels up.
It's kind of experience on a micro scale. Like it's applying experience to specific tasks.
Those games have infinite levels, by the way.
Oh, do they?
Yep.
Oh, nice.
So it's like, you start Elder Scrolls, what drove me crazy.
But didn't they change that in Skyrim?
I don't think so.
Oh, really?
You just keep going.
Oh,
It's just nonstop. You run out of content. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, eventually, you're just going to do everything in the game.
Yeah.
Because the game's not endless.
But they put a cap on the amount, like the skill part of it. Because, okay, in Oblivion, I've always been told that, like, you can just sit there and, like, you can spend the first, 2 hours of Oblivion just jumping.
Yeah.
And then leveling up your jumping, and then you'll be like, jump onto roofs.
Yeah. Right.
So, like, every time you jump, it makes your
There's a
kid,
cap
like,
in that sense.
Okay, yeah.
but the numeric level there's not.
Gotcha.
That's what's weird about the whole. That's why I brought this up, because the Elder Scrolls have a general level, like 1 to infinity,
like your character level.
But if you wanted to create like a mage that wears robes and has a sword, a one-handed sword, and a staff, but the first thing you come across is a single-handed mace and a set of armor that's heavy, then your heavy armor and your mace is going to level up as you progress through the game. So the whole time you're like, I don't want these things, but I'm leveling them up, so now I'm investing in them. And I'm progressing as a heavy armor-wearing, single-handed mace-wielding thing. And then your abilities, like as you level up, you want to spend your ability points on things that you want. So you would not spend your ability points on fire when you can't even use a magic staff yet, because you haven't found one.
Yes, you kind of have to like ignore anything that's not related to your what you.
And then you end up gimped because you don't have any gear, and so you die a lot. And like that, I had a horrible experience with Skyrim and Oblivion, and Morrowind, which are 543 of Elder Scrolls games. And so I wanted to highlight that as a progression system because it is unique. It's not just go kill these enemies and level up. It's tying that what you're doing, you're boosting your character in that regard.
Yeah, like I said, it's kind of experience on a mini scale where it's like your character has a level, but then a level with experience required to level up and allocate points. But then also every individual ability also has
dialogue choices,
experience
jumping, sprinting,
with it.
sneaking.
And the more you do it, the stronger they get. The more you fill up that bar and level up the individual stats. Cool. I think we'd already hit on the idea of allocating attributes, customizing. So the next thing that kind of has finally a real proper break from experience is what I call, I had a hard time describing it. So I said it's a mix between like Metroidvania and Zelda style equipment based progress, where throughout the game, you're going through all these environments, all the environmental levels, if you will. And you come across something, a door or a chest or a chasm that you can't open, you can't cross. And you recognize, I probably am going to need something to come back to this later to get past that and to progress to that point. And so you do the next couple dungeons, you get the hook shot, the hammer, the mine bomb,
the armor that lets you traverse lava,
whatever it is, but you get the equipment. Again, it's not a stat thing. It is a tool to help you solve puzzles that you encounter throughout the game.
And the biggest difference is the whole world is open to you from the start. Like there's really nothing else that stops you from getting there other than the piece of gear. So instead of having
than the obstacle,
the gated levels by like, you have to finish level 1 before you go to level 2, you have to finish level 2 before you go to level 3, like linear. Instead of that, it's just open.
Kind of. I mean, it still is blocking progress. Like you still
it's blocked
can't
by
get
gear.
But it's blocked by they're guiding you through the game to go get the thing to go
which is cool because sometimes you can stumble yourself.
It's nice because as opposed to a linear game where it's like you go into this room and next into this room and next into this room, like you said, you can get there at any point and then you encounter the obstacle. So it's sort of an asynchronous, or maybe not asynchronous, but it's out of order. But it's purposefully that way
to
give you
world.
It's purposely designed that way to give you a sense of, I need to remember to come back, because now it gives you that reward in that regard is like, now I know how to solve that puzzle. I'm going to go back and do it.
It's like rewarding exploration.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So then the next style is what we call collectathons.
Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah. Or Donkey Kong. Or Mario Sunshine. Or Mario Odyssey. Yeah, that's what it is. Odyssey.
And Mario 64.
Yeah, it's progression through like solving a bunch of, usually it's solving a bunch of puzzles or exploration where you get some piece of a set. And that set could be, 999 moons in Odyssey? It could be ridiculous, or it could be like a bunch of different things. Like a lot of games have, like the Tomb Raider games have a bunch of different collectibles scattered throughout, and they're different things like.
But those collectibles don't unlock doors by having 9 of them, or 10 of them.
You just get to go look back and say, look at all the things I've done. Sometimes you can use them as like a turn-in, like you can turn them in and get stuff, but.
I wouldn't look at those as like, I guess they are progression systems because they will build your character sometimes. But I think what you were highlighting was you progress through the game. Like in Banjo-Kazooie, you can't even enter level 3 or the third world, if you will, because it's kind of open world. It doesn't really have numbers attached to them. But that third world requires you to have 15 jiggies. I only have 5. So I have to go explore worlds 1 and 2 more to get more jiggies to unlock level 3.
Yeah, that's like a progression in a direct sense of progressing through the game. I also think of progression systems as like a completion almost.
Right.
I have completed the game. And so whatever that level is, whatever that
almost every game has optional collectibles.
Yeah.
Almost. I mean, it's almost
So for some people, that bar is like, I've gotten the platinum trophy, so I've only done the requirements for the platinum. For other people, it's I've done every possible thing in the game. So, Mario Odyssey is the example that comes to mind. It doesn't necessarily have a trophy or an achievement associated with it, but you can sit there and be like, I've gotten all the moons.
Yeah.
I've solved all the puzzles, got them all.
Yeah.
And that's a progression system in my mind as well.
In Mario 64, there's 120 stars.
Oh.
And when you do it, you can find Yoshi on the roof of the castle.
You get a little reward. Look at that. Progression.
Yep.
The next one is kind of it's more of a competitive thing for PvP games or esports, but they are ranks or leaderboards. And a subset of that, like you mentioned, is the prestige.
Yeah.
Where you can purposefully
in Call of Duty,
go back to level 1.
You can hit max level and have everything unlocked, and you can choose to remove all of your unlocks and go back to level 1, and you're rewarded with a little badge that says you've done this once.
Yep.
And then there's another one for 2 and 3 and 4.
And they usually come with
6,
some kind of cosmetic.
Yep.
I get to show off my cool stuff. So that's a weird like combination of like a rank, but combined with an experience system where it also is tied to how many times you've done it. Whereas the typical rank or leaderboard is like the pure version of that is just you are this good compared to all other players.
Yep.
So you have won enough matches or have enough kill death, whatever it is, to be ranked in comparison, like a ladder almost, in comparison to.
And this is what I loved about Halo
players.
2. Halo 2's online would have a level system attached to your wins and losses.
Yeah.
So if you lost, you'd level down. If you won, you'd level up. And so your level was
truly
directly,
was a leaderboard. Yeah.
Tied to how good were you.
Yep.
And I never got past like 36 out of 50 or something like that.
So by nature, that's going to have a bit of like a time involvement too, because the more you play, the more likely you are to be on the leaderboard. But
the modern prestige system in Call of Duties and stuff, that's completely time.
It's also a grind.
You can lose all the time. It takes forever. You do slow your progress down by losing, but you can still get there.
Yep,
so
exactly.
If you see somebody who's prestiged 100 times,
it doesn't necessarily indicator of skill.
Right.
Yeah.
But it probably is because he's put that much hours into it, or she put so many hours into it.
Okay. Questing or story progression is pretty straightforward. It's usually baked into the game design itself, but it's simply like working your way through a bunch of predetermined tasks or errands.
Quasi quests,
exactly. We just talked about those.
Yeah, we did.
In our ranting episode. Sometimes they're better done than others, but it's just, it's
go
just
find
like,
this. Okay, turn this in.
Usually games will have a log where you can like...
Good games do.
You can go check and see, like you can, again, like I said, a good progress system allows you to go back and see how much progress you've made, so you can sit there and see how many quests you've done.
Yeah.
And how far into the story you are. An easy kind of, like a very easy, simple quest progress system is the act structure, where, okay, now I'm in Act 2, or chapter structure, if you will. I'm in Chapter 12, I'm in Act 2, I'm in Act 4.
Death Stranding did that.
Yep, Death Stranding did it, Diablo does it. I'm trying to think of another example off the top of my head. I was about to say Outer Worlds, but it doesn't really do that. You just have the quests themselves are like...
And there's a log. Then, progression.
Exactly. So, cool. Trophies and achievements?
Yeah, buddy. So, that's why I love Sony so much. Sony's very unique and has an entire metagame involved with trophies, where every trophy you earn in the game is worth a certain amount of points that's hidden behind the player. You can't see the points per trophy, but you do have a level on your profile, and that level continues to build as you get more trophies. And so it's just like, it's a whole metagame. It's the game of playing games. And it started with Microsoft on the Xbox with the 360 and achievement system, where there was a numerical value associated, and it would just build infinitely. I have a 35,000 gamer score, and this other guy comes in, I have 100,000. This chick comes in, she's like, I got 500,000. Come on, dudes. Like, let's go.
Get on my level.
Yeah. And so it's just cool to have.
International Women's Day was yesterday.
It was. Congrats to, celebrate women. That's
celebrate
awesome.
women.
I love
so
that.
they come in and have higher gamer scores, obviously, because they're better gamers than us.
Exactly. And
sorry, I derailed you.
You did. And how trophies and achievements affect game design and their implication. Like, the developers have a chance to build extra things in for the players to find. We have a whole episode that's like the deep dive about that. But as far as
I wanted to include it because it is a progression system.
It is.
Because you're able to
on the profile. It's a meta progression.
Right. It's and it's also sort of a player motivated, like, you get to determine what kind of achievements you go after. And in some cases, I'm going to get the platinum. I'm going to get all the achievements. In World of Warcraft, there are so many achievements, you can never get them all. But it was just like, I want to get this achievement, because sometimes it was tied to a reward. But one way or another, you can look back again, similarly, and see all the achievements you've acquired. And sometimes you can show those off, all that kind of stuff. So, it's just kind of a sense of, pride and accomplishment.
Yes.
I really want a trophy a trophy in a game to be pride and accomplishment.
Yes.
I'm sure they've already done it. There's some game out there,
game,
but
yeah.
I want like a cheeky one that's right in my face about it. I wish Borderlands had done that.
They
Borderlands
would've,
should have had a pride and accomplishment.
So would Outer Worlds.
Yeah. That's right up there, sense of humor.
Yep.
So this was one I added actually right before we started, because it just came to mind. Currency progression systems. So progression systems that are tied to a currency in the game. And at first I was like, I couldn't think of any games that do that, but I did right before we started, and it was Sunset Overdrive.
Oh yeah.
Basically, you go in, you get various currencies from killing monsters, and all of your upgrades were or doing like achievement things, or I've grinded this many things.
Yeah.
Like grinded this many rails, because it was literally like skate grinding. Or I've air boosted this many times, and you'd get a currency, and then you could spend that on rewards. So you'd lose it from your bank of currencies. So it's different from XP, whereas XP is like you just get you've done the XP, you've gotten the XP.
Right.
It's allocated towards in your XP bar towards your level.
Yeah.
You don't lose it necessarily by dying. In some games you did, but usually these days you don't lose it by dying. The currency system is like, yeah, you could you would lose it when you spent it on stuff. So it's that there's an economy to the upgrading going on. But God of War did this, and so did Horizon Zero Dawn. They did it in the form of experience, so you earned experience points, but then you spent those points as opposed to just
as a currency
leveling up. Yeah, so there was almost a currency system to it. So
and you can also gate the players with currency too, like forcing players to grind more to have enough currency to progress in the story for something else. The whole free to play model has the you generate 3 gems every hour, and it takes 6 hours for one play.
Yeah.
So you just have to wait. Or buy gems
Those are the
with
bad
money.
ones.
Yeah.
The good ones just for the redeeming thing about currency systems is that they also help you make meaningful choices.
Yeah.
So Sunset Overdrive was a blast because there were so many guns, crazy, wild, fantastic, beautiful guns out in the game.
Yeah.
But you got to like decide which ones you wanted to go after, but it came at the cost of currency, so that you spend it.
Yeah.
I liked it a lot.
That's cool. Yeah. The player herself.
Yep. The player progression.
This is Bloodborne and Dark Souls and Ghosts of Sekiro.
Sekiro, yep.
Shadows Die Twice.
Yeah, so a lot of those Soulsborne games from software.
Where the player yourself levels up, so to speak.
Well,
you become better at the game.
You become better, yeah. Player progression is a term for just getting better at a game. It's going to happen in every single game. You're going to get better. That's what I try to tell new players, whoever are playing something for the first time, like, just play it more, you will get better. Especially like playing with Smash. People who are playing Smash for the first time. Yeah. It's like, now if it's someone who's actually interested in like, I want to get better, it's like, you will get better just by doing it. Yep. So any skill-based game, whether it's PvP or PvE.
Or rhythm game.
Yeah. Yeah. There again, player progression is going to come with a cap of its own. Like, you're only ever going to be so skilled. I'm only ever going to be so good at Smash.
At your current life.
Right.
You could get better at Smash. Hire a coach, quit your job.
Sure.
Invest
yes.
more. You can get better, but at what cost?
In my current circumstances, yes, exactly. Yeah. So again, player progression is baked into every game, but it's not part of the game. There's no coding for it. It's just what it is. It's just inherent. Yeah. I call it percentage-based progression, where it's just, again, usually it's tied to achievements and stuff like that, but where the game will give you some kind of indicator of you have accomplished this much of the game. So I think of Spider-Man. Yeah. Where every single...
The Lego games
you
do
how
this.
many things you need to do of each task to have the full completion.
Yep, and you have an overarching percentage complete of everything.
Yep. And that's all the ones I had. So did you want to talk about any other ones, or
T-Bone wrote in?
T-Bone did write
on Discord, like you guys can go to Discord,
and we'll talk about your thoughts.
Yes, he wrote in about a progression system that he's unique. That I remember this for the Nintendo 64. There was a wrestling game called WWF WrestleMania 2000, and it was part of a series of wrestling games made by, I think it was Ukes, if I recall correctly, but there was a whole bunch of them. NWO versus WCW Revenge. The sequel to WrestleMania 2000 was No Mercy, but WrestleMania 2000 specifically had a career mode as you would progress through that didn't have a difficulty setting. And you would start off as a new wrestler, and you would just play. In the beginning, wrestles, I guess, the competition was easy. You could win, and as you build up your win to loss ratio, you would unlock the next wrestlers. Yeah. And so you get to the medium tier, and you have to keep, and it would get harder and harder and harder as you went up. But to get to the top, you actually had to overcome the hardest stuff. But as you would lose, you'd rank down, and you weren't even eligible to wrestle the hardest stuff. So you had to work your way back up again. almost like what I was talking about with Halo 2, where your level would go down. If you lost, it would go up if you won. But that's like online ranking, and it's for matchmaking purposes. This was built into the single-player campaign.
Yeah.
So you actually had to get better as a player.
Yeah.
So it married the idea that you're talking about with the player progression. As your skills get better, it's the only way you're going to beat the game.
Yeah.
It's like you have to get good.
Yeah.
And that's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't even know that was a thing. That's pretty cool and unique, and they don't really do that anymore.
Yep.
They should. Go back and do that again.
All right. We don't have a ton of time to talk about downsides, and I'd rather personally talk about ways we think progression models can be improved or things we'd like to see in the future.
Yeah.
So there are, I would say that just sort of as a single sentence, there's a lot of problems with all these various progression models.
Yep.
Some of them are better than others, but also some of them are simpler than others. I say there's nothing wrong with the collectathon, but collectathons don't have the same motivator as a lot of these RPG systems because, I mean, they're way more popular. They're being baked into all kinds of games.
Do you know what game circumvents all of the problems of Metroidvania?
What's that?
Breath of the Wild.
Oh, yeah.
That's perfect.
No, I agree, because you can always just ever go do the things you want to do.
I just had to mention Breath of the Wild on our
that's
podcast.
Good. Of course.
Contractual.
We're contractually obligated. But even the experience system, too, has its downsides. And so this is how I'm going to segue right into our instead of, I'm going to bypass this question by taking the sentence and segueing it into the question about how they can be improved.
Yeah.
One of the biggest problems I find with, or that I've kind of come to with the leveling up system is, like you were talking about, it's kind of played out now. Like, it's played out, and it's really just there as sort of like a gate, a requirement. I gotta get to max level so I can do the fun stuff. Like, okay, like XP systems used to be fun, and I think they still are. There's still a place for them, but it's just like, I don't care if I'm level 30. I don't care if I'm level 4, whatever the max level is, 30, 40. That doesn't impress me anymore.
Yeah.
It's just a way of saying, okay, cool, this is the artificial number that we're going to attach with the end of the game, with the end of the campaign or whatever it is, and then you can get to the good stuff or the end game activities, whatever. And it's just kind of trite now. I'm like, why not just like, and so what I was thinking of is if I were to design a game, the game idea that's in the back of my head is what I really love. One of the like best things in World of Warcraft was like when they had these like quests that were tied specifically to like the type of character you were. So you had to go do this whole quest chain if you were a feral druid, and the restoration druids had a whole different quest.
Yeah.
And so it was tied to that class fantasy, so you were doing different things depending on how you specialized your class.
Yeah.
I really like that, and the idea that's been in the back of my head, I was like, imagine a RPG, a fantasy RPG, where at the very beginning of the game, you pick your class. So, and that could be as simple as you walk over and pick up the staff, or you walk over and pick up the sword and shield.
Yeah.
And then you've chosen your class. And then the content of the game is entirely different. Like the mage goes and does mage quests in the mage part of the world, and the warrior does warrior quests in the warrior part of the world, and the entire story is different depending on which class you choose. And then think about the replayability. Well, cool, I've done the warrior story, I want to go back and do the mage story. But like, once you complete the story, then you've unlocked the end game, and there's no level attached to it. You don't have to have a level, just your character gets stronger through the gear. So it's a whole gear-based game in and of itself. So you have the whole progression system is just the gearing, and the leveling up, the gating is just done through have you completed the story or not. Yeah. And you can unlock more skills, of course, as you go, depending on what gear you get.
So the gear would unlock the skills.
Right. So think about like, okay, all of your movement-based skills are in your boots. So depending on what boots you have, you unlock different movement skills. And then your weapon is your primary attack skills. Your gloves give you your secondary attack skill. You know, so things like that. That's kind of like what I've been thinking of, like, just get the XP out of it altogether and just do it as like a pure gearing system. And the specifics of the gearing system is the gear affects your ability, like the gear is your abilities.
What if the gear had slots and you found these magical items spaced around the world that would give you abilities that you could put into the weapons?
That's also cool. That's Path of Exile's system, actually.
That's Final Fantasy VII's materia system.
Cool. Oh yeah, that's also yeah. Path of Exile, you might actually like that about Path of Exile. Like you kill monsters, and monsters will drop pieces of gear, and every piece of gear has a slot. Or different slots. And also things that the other types of things that can drop are these little gems. Yeah. And the gems are abilities. So when you socket it, so you have a fire. Yeah, cool. It's materia. It's the materia system. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think that was a really unique progression system, but Final Fantasy VII had levels too. So
exactly. And each materia had levels.
Yeah.
Exactly as well. So you had to use it. Did they just be equipped?
To
Like,
acquire
all material.
AP.
Yeah, so you didn't have to use it. Like you didn't have to use fire. Or
Yeah, enemies would drop
Firaga.
AP as well as XP, and AP
Oh,
ability
that's
points
right.
would augment.
All the
the-
equipped materia in your
yeah,
party.
yep.
Yeah, makes sense. The magic pots. I learned this.
Yeah, and
You
the
kill the
crater.
magic pots, and they dropped an obscene amount of.
And certain gear was
XP
times
and
3
AP.
growth.
Mhm.
And you can get
I love
times
that.
3 to AP, and
Yep.
yeah. Well,
What
yeah.
are your thoughts on iterating on
I think
progression
it's-
systems?
I think you're right about the experience system is played out, and it's become the default like thing across every game.
Yeah.
So I think the gaming industry as a whole just needs to evolve past that.
Yeah, iterate
figure
on it
out-
somehow.
Yeah.
Evolve it.
Mhm.
Try something different.
Right.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I don't know what else it would be because it hasn't happened, and I'm not
Mhm.
that creative of a mind to figure out that system. But it's got to be more linear than just like physical level progression.
I think we should, like I said, I mean, my system is, the system I described is what I think would be really cool.
Mhm.
But what I'm trying to get at is tying progression to content again.
Right.
Because that's what it used to, every game just, you progress through the game by playing through the content.
Yep.
And I want that again. I want you to be able to.
Yeah, and the level system and the experience level system used to have this cool like power fantasy where
Mm-hmm.
you would run across an enemy that was way higher level, and you're like, I got one shotted by that thing. But then 15 hours later, you're killing it. And you
Uh-huh.
just feel like, oh man, I came so far. And it was almost these objective markers.
Mhm.
And that was what was cool back in the heyday
Yeah.
of like original JRPGs.
Well, because they used to
and
do
stuff.
it. It used to be, again, having a level used to mean something.
Right.
Now the levels are just the gate
Right.
to the gear.
Mhm.
So if it's just going to be gear, just do it through the gear.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or do it through, yeah, that's what I'm
Mhm.
thinking.
Yeah. And even in like Destiny and Division, it's not even about the character level because it's so a level 15 is no different from a level 30
Yeah,
at all.
they've added
Just-
like
that's your-
scaling
yeah.
now so that they want to make it so that like many of these games have scaling.
So people can play together.
Right.
Yep.
But what that means is as you progress through the relative level of enemies is the same no matter what level you are anyways.
Right.
So it's like, okay, well,
Making them even more superfluous.
why do I need to? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so superfluous now.
Yeah.
And it literally just serves as a way to like, you have to do this first. Borderlands is the worst at it again.
Yep.
I know I've been railing a lot on Borderlands, but the whole like, you have to get to level 50, 53 now it is.
Mhm.
And to do that, you have to play through the game X amount of times. It's just like,
Yeah. forget
why are
that.
you requiring me to check this off the list before I can actually have fun
Right.
playing the game? Yeah.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it definitely is just I think when done well, it's still good. And really, it is like you said, it's the default now. So it's like, I'm not going to say a game is bad because it includes an XP system.
Right.
But it is just getting, like, we need the next big advancement. We need the next step forward in progression. We need to progress progression systems.
Yes.
Yeah.
We do.
So,
Yep.
that's what I'm hoping for. So,
Yeah. We'll see what happens.
what is your perfect progression system? Listeners, Pod Smashers.
Oh, I thought you were asking me. I was like,
No.
I just talked about it.
If you could design one Pod Smashers, what do you think? What are your favorites? What are the elements you like on the existing progression systems, and what would you do? What would you combine to make your perfect progression system?
Yeah.
Where can they find us? To remind
Once
the
again,
Pod Smashers?
I'll give you the shortened version this time. 80-bit Podsmash. 80bitpodsmash.com is our landing website with links to all of our podcasting platforms. We're on all social media: Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, Twitter. 80-bit Podsmash, no hyphens, uppercases, or anything funny. You can find us on all of those things to interact with us. Also, we'll be on twitch.tv/80-bit Podsmash on Wednesdays, and we will be on Discord with a link to our server in all of our show notes.
Awesome. We don't have an episode planned yet for next week, but we will by next week.
Yes, we will.
Listen to it. So it will be a surprise for next week.
All right.
And
I like surprises.
yeah, we'll see you then.
See you next week.